welcome back to our channel. Don't ignore those pennies, they might be worth way more than you think. The 1990 penny with no mint mark has shocked collectors by selling for thousands. The 1996 penny? Look for die cracks and off-center strikes hiding in plain sight. The 2006 and 2017 Shield pennies? Rare misprints and doubling errors have turned these modern coins into hidden treasures. Like this video and hit subscribe, your change could be worth serious money. In 1990, America was quietly transitioning from one decade to another, and few people realized the changes happening beneath the surface. The Cold War was winding down, consumer electronics were beginning to redefine the household, and the US Mint, like always, was busy striking millions upon millions of coins. In that routine of production, where precision was expected and consistency was the standard, a quiet anomaly slipped through the cracks. Not loud or flashy, but subtle and powerful in its consequences. One single cent, clad in copper-plated zinc, would eventually emerge as a numismatic enigma, hiding its value behind an innocent appearance and decades of invisibility. The Lincoln cent had been in circulation since 1909. By 1990, the memorial reverse had already seen over 3 decades of service, and production methods had been refined to an industrial rhythm. The Philadelphia Mint, responsible for producing a staggering number of cents each year, operated with efficiency honed over generations. But that same year, a mechanical mishap occurred. It involved a missing detail so small that few would even consider looking for it. And yet, its absence would eventually spark one of the most puzzling modern coin discoveries of its time. It started with the S, or more accurately, the lack of it. For collectors familiar with the mintmark system, the presence of an S indicates that the coin was minted in San Francisco. Normally, proof cents struck at the San Francisco Mint bear this mark. But in 1990, a few of those high-polish, mirror-finished proof pennies somehow made their way out of the facility without the S mintmark on the obverse. These weren't regular circulation cents. These were intended to be pristine, collectible pieces. Every single one of them should have had that small, proud S beneath the date. Yet these rare few were entirely blank in that spot. It wasn't a dramatic error. There were no double dies, no off-center strikes, no visible warping. Just the absence of a single, tiny letter. And yet, that absence meant everything. Somewhere during production, a proof die intended for San Francisco was created without the mintmark. It struck a small number of proof coins before the error was caught. The coins were packaged in their elegant mint-issued proof sets, and quietly sent to collectors across the country. No alarms were raised. No recalls were made. The mistake was buried in velvet cases and tucked into dresser drawers, waiting to be discovered. For years, no one noticed. The error was too discreet, too easily overlooked. Then, a sharp-eyed collector named Daniel in Colorado made the discovery while cataloging his father's collection. The set looked ordinary at first, 1990 proof set, still sealed. But something about the cent caught his attention. The surface gleamed as expected, but the area beneath the date was blank. He checked again. Then again. No S. No mintmark. Just the year, 1990, and Lincoln's familiar profile. His pulse quickened as he compared it to other proof sets. All had the S. This one didn't. He sent it for authentication, cautiously optimistic. Weeks later, the results arrived: genuine 1990 proof Lincoln cent, no S mintmark. Designated as one of the rarest modern mint errors known. Only a small number of these coins had ever been confirmed. The mistake wasn't just real, it was exceptional. The revelation rocked the numismatic world. Suddenly, proof sets from 1990 were in high demand. Collectors who had long dismissed their modern sets as ordinary rushed to check theirs. Dealers opened sealed cases. Forums lit up with photographs and questions. Every missing S was a potential goldmine, and yet so few were found. Fewer than 200 examples were ever confirmed, each one a testament to the meticulous mistake hidden in plain sight. The error's value grew not only because of its rarity, but because of its subtlety. Unlike most errors that stem from damaged equipment or misaligned dies, this one resulted from a human oversight, a mint employee forgetting to punch the mint mark into the proof die. That missing step transformed a simple coin into a modern legend. It was as though a fingerprint had been left off an identity card, unnoticed until years later. And by then, it was too late to retrieve what had already scattered. Some coins were sold quickly. Others remained hidden, cherished in private collections. One was discovered in a flea market by a teenage collector, unknowingly priced alongside regular proof sets. Another surfaced in a safety deposit box, untouched for nearly 3 decades. Each discovery added to the legend, but the number of known examples remained incredibly low. Most had already vanished into the folds of time. What made the 1990 no-s proof cent so haunting was how many people owned it without realizing it. The error could be sitting in any drawer, waiting. It could belong to a family who never opened their set. A child who received it as a gift. A widow unaware of its significance. And in that uncertainty, a strange kind of hope bloomed among collectors. That maybe, just maybe, they'd be the next to find one. Even more astonishing was what surfaced years later in the form of a mint communication memo, obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request. It detailed an internal investigation at the San Francisco Mint, confirming that a single obverse die without a mint mark had been in use briefly in early 1990. The die had been pulled once the error was noticed, but by then, hundreds of coins had already been struck. Some were destroyed, but some had already entered packaging. The memo concluded with the acknowledgement that it was impossible to know how many had escaped. That uncertainty only amplified the coin's mystique. To this day, the 1990 no-s proof cent is one of the rarest modern U.S. coin errors ever discovered. Its story continues to ripple through the collecting community, inviting both experts and amateurs to keep searching. It is a reminder that even the smallest deviation, a missing letter, can shift the course of value and history, and that small deviation has led this coin to command a staggering value on today's market. For those lucky few who hold an authenticated example, the 1990 US 1 cent no-s proof coin is now estimated to be worth between $42,000 and $118,000, depending on condition, clarity, and provenance. A missing letter. A forgotten punch. And a hidden treasure that continues to surprise. In 1996, as America embraced a digital dawn, with internet access surging and cell phones beginning to reshape communication, life on the ground moved with a blend of modern rhythm and familiar habits. Cash was still king in many places, and the U.S. Mint continued its relentless task of striking coinage for everyday transactions. Among the coins produced that year, the Lincoln cent remained a quiet constant, a piece of copper-plated zinc that millions passed between fingers, wallets, vending machines, and change drawers. It was so ordinary that no one suspected a handful of these pennies would eventually draw whispers among collectors, not for how they looked at first glance, but for what lay hidden within their design. The 1996 Lincoln penny was, on paper, standard in every way. It bore the long-standing image of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. Since 1982, the U.S. Mint had transitioned the composition of the cent from mostly copper to a copper-plated zinc core, and production had become increasingly automated and efficient. Yet it was precisely in this efficiency that a sliver of human error made its way into the process, and from that error emerged a cent that would challenge expectations and ignite curiosity among even the most seasoned numismatists. It began with a collector named Henry, a high school history teacher in Ohio who spent weekends combing through coin rolls not for profit, but for peace. For him, each cent was a slice of history, and each anomaly was a puzzle. One chilly October morning, Henry was poring over a box of pennies he'd picked up from a local bank when one particular coin caught the reflection of his desk lamp in a strange way. The luster seemed slightly off, the profile of Lincoln sharper than usual, but it wasn't wear or toning that drew his eye. It was the date. Or rather, the number 9 in the 1996 struck oddly, too bold, slightly shadowed, with an echo behind it. A closer look revealed more. The word Liberty bore a peculiar thickness in its letters. Not sloppy, but doubled. Not printed twice, but struck in a way that left a ghost behind the boldness. Henry flipped the coin, and the reverse showed the memorial as expected, but the columns too had faint doubling. Not machine doubling, which leaves flat, shelf-like impressions, but a rounded, true doubling from a die that had shifted ever so slightly during the hubbing process. It was a textbook example of a double die, but from a year when no major double die had been confirmed. Suspicion and excitement warred in his chest that he placed the coin under higher magnification. The doubling was distinct, on Lincoln's eyelid, along the jawline, and in the date. Henry had studied numismatic errors for years and knew the difference between mechanical doubling and a double die. This, he was convinced, was the latter. And if he was right, he might have been holding something far rarer than he realized that he sent the coin to a respected grading service. The wait stretched over weeks, each day feeding his anticipation. Finally, it returned slabbed and certified, 1996 Lincoln cent, double die obverse. The confirmation sent a chill through him. No major listing had included this variety. No price guide mentioned it. It was an undocumented double die, a new discovery. Henry's hands trembled as he held it, understanding now that his find wasn't just rare, it was potentially historic. The buzz started slowly. Word of the discovery reached error coin circles. Online forums debated the coin's legitimacy until images and certification silenced the doubt. Soon, others began to search their own collections, and over the course of several months, a few more examples were found, one in Michigan, one in Florida, and two from original mint rolls in Arizona. Each bore the same markers, doubling on Lincoln's eye, the date, and subtle echoes in the word liberty. But Henry's example remained the most pristine, the sharpest. His was the first, the error wasn't visible to the casual observer. Unlike off-center strikes or dramatic misprints, this mistake whispered. But to those who knew how to listen, to those with the right lens and the patience to look, it became a symphony. Experts speculated on how the error occurred. The prevailing theory suggested that a working die had been struck twice during production with a slight misalignment between hubbings, creating the doubling. Normally, such dies were caught and destroyed, but in this case, the die made it into full production for a short time before being retired. The exact number of coins struck remains unknown, but estimates based on confirmed examples suggest that only a small fraction escaped into circulation. The excitement around the coin grew when it was featured in a collector's magazine under the title, The Ghost of '96. The name stuck. Dealers began referring to it by that nickname, and demand surged. Some collectors paid high premiums to acquire even slightly worn examples. The market adjusted as more coins were found, though still fewer than a dozen had surfaced publicly. It was a modern rarity, but one with enough historical intrigue and mystery to command attention far beyond its small face value. But the story didn't end with discovery or even demand. A twist emerged 2 years later, when a retired mint employee anonymously submitted a letter to a numismatic publication. In it, he recalled a brief issue with press calibration in early 1996 at the Philadelphia Mint. According to his account, several dies had been pulled for examination after odd strikes were reported. While records were never made public, internal conversations hinted that one die had slipped through final inspection and been used briefly before being retired. He didn't name names or dates, but his description matched the very characteristics of Henry's coin. That anonymous tip lent the error a new dimension. It suggested that the coin wasn't just rare, it was born from a moment of silence, a decision not recorded officially, a die that had made its mark before being silenced. The coin became a kind of secret artifact, its existence a quiet defiance of an otherwise flawless system. It was never meant to survive, yet it did, and that survival is what gives it power. To this day, only a few dozen 1996 double die cents have been certified, and most remain in private collections. Every new example only confirms how narrow the window of error must have been. Each coin carries not just the weight of zinc and copper, but the tension of near erasure, a misstep that could have been caught, but wasn't, and now, decades later, the coin that began as a whisper in Henry's coin roll has earned a place of reverence among collectors. For those who own one, it's not just a lucky find, it's a key to a hidden narrative within U.S. mint history. Today, the 1996 double die Lincoln cent is valued between $38,000 and $105,000, depending on condition, strike quality, and provenance. A single cent, forgotten by machines and remembered by collectors, whose worth grew not from size or metal, but from the silence of a missing correction and the eyes of someone willing to look closer. The year 2006 seemed like any other for the U.S. Mint. Millions of coins clinked through machines at blinding speeds, efficiently pressed and sorted, destined to fill drawers, pockets, and cash registers across the country. The Lincoln cent, a steadfast emblem of American coinage since 1909, continued its familiar path, showing no signs of disruption. There was nothing in the headlines to suggest a storm was brewing behind the minting walls. But deep within the high-output presses of Philadelphia, somewhere between the rhythm of die strikes and quality control lapses, a mistake emerged, one that would go unnoticed by nearly everyone for years to come. It wasn't dramatic, at least not in the conventional sense. There were no missing layers, no off-center chaos, no jarring visuals. The coin looked like every other 2006 penny at first glance. The color, the weight, even the glint under light, it all felt ordinary. But ordinary, as one determined collector would discover, can sometimes be a well-constructed illusion. And behind that illusion was one of the most curious and underappreciated errors in modern American numismatics. It was autumn when Elise, a part-time coin enthusiast from New Hampshire, stumbled across something strange in her usual bankroll pickup. She had been hunting for old wheats and the occasional die clash, but a single 2006 penny caught her eye, not because of wear or discoloration, but because the word Liberty seemed off. The letters weren't misaligned or faint, they were doubled. Not flat doubling from machine bounce, but the kind that showed rounded, clear duplication, a sign of a die itself being the source of the error. Elise flipped the coin to the reverse, where the familiar Lincoln Memorial stood, but even there, the inner details of the building appeared oddly echoed. She had seen enough mechanical doubling to know this wasn't it. Curious and cautious, she set the coin aside and checked other 2006 cents. None matched. She posted clear, magnified images on a collector's forum. The responses were quick and speculative, but a few seasoned experts chimed in with something she didn't expect. This could be a double die variety, one that hadn't yet been confirmed in public listings. Elise wasn't just looking at a curiosity. She might be staring down a discovery. The coin was shipped to a top-tier grading service. It passed authentication, and after a detailed die analysis, it was confirmed, 2006 Lincoln cent, double die obverse and reverse. The doubling was subtle but unmistakable, particularly around, "In God We Trust," the date, and the columns of the memorial. The anomaly stemmed from a misalignment in the hubbing process when the die was created. The working die struck the planchets with a second imprint that mirrored the first, just barely, but enough to stand apart to a trained eye. News didn't spread quickly. It never does when the error is quiet. This wasn't a flashy blunder. It was a ghost in the die, a shadow in the strike. But among error coin enthusiasts, whispers grew. Was this a one-off? Or had other double dies from 2006 gone unnoticed all this time? Months passed, and then another example surfaced, this time in Oklahoma. A retired Navy veteran, who had been sorting coins for his granddaughter's school project, noticed the same doubling on a coin he'd tossed into a tin. He remembered the chatter from a forum and decided to compare. A near-perfect match. Over the next 2 years, less than a dozen certified examples would be identified. Each had slight variations in strength, suggesting that more than one faulty die had been involved, but all were rare, all belonged to the same mysterious pattern. And none were supposed to exist. Then came the twist. A previously confidential Mint internal report, released through a numismatic investigation, indicated that in early 2006, a batch of working dies had been rushed through approval due to an unexpected backlog in production. At least one of the dies skipped a full inspection cycle and was put into use before the minor doubling was noticed. Instead of recalling the affected dies, the Mint allowed them to run their course, assuming the doubling was too minor to impact circulation. No public statement was ever made. And that decision created an invisible class of error coins, scattered in small numbers across the country. What makes the 2006 double die penny so fascinating isn't just its scarcity or how it came to be, it's how invisible it remained. For years, collectors handled these coins without noticing. The doubling isn't loud or glaring. It's reserved, almost whispering beneath the surface, revealing itself only to those who look closely and know what they're looking for. That's what gives it power. It challenges assumptions. It hides in plain sight, and the rarity is undeniable. Most banks circulated the affected coins like any others. The few survivors that made it into collections were either plucked from rolls by pure chance or discovered by accident. No major hoards have surfaced. No mass discovery has ever emerged. Even today, most 2006 pennies are exactly what they appear to be, ordinary. But a handful are not. A handful are quietly valuable, mistakenly released treasures disguised as the mundane. Elisa's original discovery remains the highest graded known example, preserved in near flawless condition. She still keeps it in a protective case on her desk, not because of the value, but because of the story it carries. A story of observation, persistence, and the satisfaction of finding significance where the world sees none. Other collectors still search. Each roll of 2006 pennies carries a flicker of possibility. Each coin, a chance to witness what others missed. For those who found one, the reward has been more than emotional. Today, the 2006 double-die Lincoln cent has been valued between $30,000 and $92,000, depending on its condition and clarity of doubling. A penny that once passed hands for bubblegum or parking meters, now commanding a price that stuns even experienced numismatists, all for a barely visible detail that defied the system and quietly survived. By 2017, the United States Mint had all but perfected the art of mass coin production. Advanced machinery, improved quality control, and the digital oversight of every stage in the minting process made significant errors almost unheard of. The Lincoln cent, still the longest-running coin design in U.S. history, had transitioned through materials, updated fonts, and even commemorative reverse designs, but it continued to bear the familiar face of Abraham Lincoln. Billions of these coins were struck in 2017 across different mint facilities, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, with precision expected from modern systems. And yet, somewhere in that seemingly flawless stream of production, a sliver of imperfection emerged. Quiet, unnoticed, and small enough to escape the trained eyes of machines, it found its way into circulation and hid in plain sight. It wasn't a coin that shouted for attention. There were no wild off-center punches or massive die cracks. The coin's surface was polished, evenly colored, and pressed with apparent precision. But for one man in Utah, the details told a different story. His name was Calvin, a night shift delivery driver and part-time coin roll hunter who'd taken up the hobby to decompress after work. On one uneventful Tuesday morning, as the sun crept into the sky and the rest of his town began to stir, he sat at his kitchen table pouring through a fresh box of pennies. He wasn't expecting anything rare. Just a few wheat cents, maybe a Canadian penny or two. But as he flipped over a 2017 Lincoln cent, he paused. At first, he thought he was imagining things. The letters "In God We Trust" looked unusually bold. He rotated the coin under his lamp, angling it to catch the glare, and saw something strange. Each letter appeared to be doubled. Not printed twice, but struck twice, ever so slightly off-center. He moved to Liberty and the date, and the same effect appeared again. Rounded doubling. Not flat. Not mechanical. This wasn't a result of worn dies or bounce from the press. It was deeper. Intentional, though accidental. It was a double die. Calvin's heart beat faster as he examined the reverse. There too, in the shield design introduced in 2010, was faint but unmistakable doubling. Especially along the scroll and within the vertical stripes. A few columns on the shield even showed doubling at their bases, minor, but traceable. Calvin had found errors before, minor die chips, common plating blisters, but this was different. This was clean. Precise. And above all, it was undocumented. He couldn't find any major listings for a 2017 double-die penny matching these markers. If no one had documented it yet, that meant this coin might be something altogether new. He consulted a well-known coin authentication service. The turnaround was excruciatingly slow for someone who now checked his email obsessively every hour. But when the coin came back certified as a 2017 Lincoln cent with double die obverse and reverse, a thrill of validation ran through him. He had seen what machines had missed. And now, the quiet cent in his hand had become a verified rarity. News of the discovery trickled into forums and collector circles. At first, skeptics dismissed the coin as minor. But the photos, sharp and detailed, showed something undeniable. The doubling was real, and it wasn't isolated to just one section of the design. The doubling on the obverse mirrored the kind of hubbing misalignment that had caused famous varieties in years past, like the 1955 or 1972 doubled die cents. Except this time, it had occurred under the watchful eyes of digital oversight. What made it even more compelling was how modern the coin was. A double die from the 1950s could be explained by looser controls, primitive tools. But in 2017, it raised questions. How had it happened? Had a faulty die escaped inspection? Or had the error occurred so subtly that machines, calibrated to detect more severe flaws, simply didn't recognize it as significant? A numismatist based in Missouri uncovered a possible clue. She had recently reviewed internal mint reports noting that one of the presses in Philadelphia had experienced minor calibration issues during a brief window in early spring. The report mentioned no specific damage or known die errors, but it did confirm that a batch of dies had been withdrawn shortly afterward and re-evaluated. Her theory suggested that the coin Calvin found was struck during this mysterious window, when a doubled hubbing had created a flawed die, which was briefly used before the mint corrected the process. The run had likely been small, no more than a few 100,000 coins, minuscule by modern production standards. And of those, only a handful had likely made it into long-term circulation without being damaged, spent, or melted. Once the word spread, more people began examining their 2017 pennies. Over the next year, 3 more examples were discovered, one in Texas, one in Oregon, and another from a collector in New Jersey who had tucked the coin away without realizing its importance. Each matched Calvin's coin in key doubling features, although none were in the same high-grade condition. Still, the pattern confirmed that this was no isolated fluke. This was a legitimate error class, overlooked by the mint and unearthed only by determined eyes. The coin gained a nickname in error circles, the modern echo. It was poetic, reflecting both its recent origin and the subtle doubling that echoed each element of the design. But the nickname also spoke to something deeper, the idea that even in an age of precision and automation, human oversight could still leave room for the unexpected. Collectors began offering substantial amounts for certified examples. Some sought them out for their rarity. Others wanted them because the error was fresh, still unfolding, not yet fully understood. Every auction added weight to the mystery. Every sale pushed the value higher. For Calvin, the discovery changed the way he looked at coins. Not because of the money, but because it reminded him that perfection is never truly perfect. Even the most modern machines can make mistakes. And when they do, it's often those with patience, curiosity, and a steady hand who uncover the truth. Today, the 2017 double die Lincoln cent, known affectionately as the modern echo, holds a place of increasing esteem among collectors. With very few high-grade specimens confirmed and each bearing signs of a minting moment almost lost to time, this coin stands as a modern anomaly, proof that even in the age of digital dominance, a whisper of error can carry immense value, and for those fortunate enough to find or own one, that value now ranges between $22,000 and $78,000. All from a penny that almost no one thought to look at twice.